New Zealand would say that the New Zealand parents are not the parents of the child. The surrogate is her partner are the parents of the child, even though they have no biological connection.
Well, Stuart, very nice to meet you. And thank you so much for joining this interview and talking about the legal process for the parents coming from New Zealand to the US to have their baby through surrogacy. They wanted to know what's the next step when their baby are born, and then they wanted to bring the baby back to New Zealand. What's the process they need to prepare before baby born, when after baby born?
So because New Zealand recognises the surrogate and her partner as the parents of the child, then the only way for New Zealand intended parents to gain legal parental status is through adoption. But that process needs to really start before the baby's born, with all of the paperwork. So really, you need to contact a lawyer when the surrogate is about 12 weeks pregnant. And at that point, we start the whole process of the adoption, which involves Arama Tamariki, which is our social work department, who then get involved to assess you as prospective adoptive parents. And then we start looking at drafting the court documentation that will be needed for once the baby's born.
Why does it need to be done before a baby is born? It's okay if it's done after baby's born.
It's okay to do it after the baby's born, but it's just going to mean that you're going to have to remain in the US for a longer period of time. If you do it before the baby's born, the report that is necessary for the adoption is effectively pre-written, and then it just needs to be tidied up once the baby's born. So that can be quite quickly after the baby's born, all of the documentation pulled together, and then the court hearing can take place within about 6 weeks of the baby being born. And that can take place on video while you're still in the US. And then once the adoption takes place, the baby immediately becomes a New Zealand citizen if one of the parents or both of the parents are New Zealand citizens or residents. And then New Zealand will send you the baby's New Zealand passport, and then you can travel to New Zealand. But if you start the process after the baby's born, then you're going to have to wait in the US while that whole adoption report is written by Arama Tamariki. And part of that is they need to obtain police certificates for you. They need to obtain medical information about you, financial information, etc. So it can take some time. So it means that if you don't start the process until after the baby's born, you could be waiting in the US for months, awaiting that whole process to be completed.
Well, thank you for giving that important information. But I'm just curious, can the baby go to New Zealand as a US citizen?
US citizens have visa waiver entry into New Zealand, meaning that they don't need to apply for a visa beforehand. They can apply for what's called an NZETA, which is like an approval to travel. The issue with surrogacies is that our immigration department is quite alive to the fact that couples go to US and other countries in particular for the purposes of surrogacy. So if in that process of applying for the NZETA, they are concerned that this baby may have been born from a surrogacy, then they'll refuse the entry permission. So what we do is if we get involved at an early stage, we can request a visa be pre-approved by the Minister of Immigration. And it means that even if the paperwork's not ready for the court process after the baby's born, if everything's been done in advance, we can get a visa for the baby within a very short period of time, and then you can come back to New Zealand and wait on the court proceedings taking place. But you carry a risk if you don't do anything and you just apply for an NZETA, you run the risk that immigration will decline your baby entry into the country if they suspect the baby's been born from a surrogacy. And the reason for that is because it does not recognize you as the intended parents as the legal parents of the child. So they're basically treating you as if you're trafficking this child to another country because the baby is the legal child of the surrogate.
I see. So that actually tells us why it's important to contact attorney, start the process even before baby's born, but how
Yeah.
early? So we kind of want
So,
to answer some key questions. How early?
if it was me, I would say contact me when you're in the process of signing agency agreements and surrogacy agreements. Agency agreements are, generally standard, but more so for the surrogacy agreement. A lot of surrogacy agreements do not contemplate the New Zealand process because for a lot of countries that the agencies deal with, the surrogate's job is effectively complete once the baby is born. But with New Zealand, we need the surrogate and her partner to consent to the adoption. She can only do that 2 weeks after the baby's born. So there's things that we need the surrogate to do after the baby has been born. We need to make sure that the surrogacy arrangement or agreement contemplates the surrogate doing some other stuff after the baby's born. So that's why I say to people, contact me before you sign. Then that way we can check the agreement, make sure it's fit for our purposes. I'm not advising them on the operation of the contracts in the US. I'm just saying this is what we need for our purposes. And then once those documents are signed off, then we're really in a holding pattern waiting for the surrogate to get pregnant. And then at the 12-week stage, things start kicking in.
We have the client to contact attorney even at the stage of signing the surrogacy contract, right? And then after confirmation of pregnancy, and then, the pregnancy whole process, at which stage they kind of start the warm up and then also kind of start preparing the documents. So kind of basically contact you again.
Yeah, so they would contact me again when the surrogate's 12 weeks pregnant. And at that stage, we start the adoption process by the intended parents in contact with Arama Tamariki social work, who then start doing the pre-assessment and pre-writing their report that will be needed later for the adoption court hearing.
How long does that take? Like a month, 2 months?
Oh, they take a few months to do things. Basically, what happens at that 12-week stage, you as the intended parent, you sign a consent document and we send that to Arama Tamariki. Arama Tamariki then sends you their forms, which is gathering information about you. There's a form for your doctor to complete. There's a form to obtain police certificates. And if you're a citizen or were born in another country before becoming a New Zealand citizen, then you need to obtain police certificates from that other country as well. There's financial disclosures. 2 referees, 2 friends or family members provide information about you. The social worker will contact you, ask you lots of different questions about your parenting journey, etc. They'll come and visit your home. They'll check your house, make sure it's a safe environment for a child to be raised in. So all of that can take a few months, and that's why, as I say, it's important that we contact Arama Tamariki at that 12-week stage. And the reason for that 12-week stage is kind of obvious, but it's, at that point, people start to relax a bit and say, okay, this baby's probably going to go to term. And, our social work department, being a government department, has resource constraints. So they wait until that 12-week period before they start the process.
So, okay, on the surrogacy agreement is signed and then start on the 12 weeks and then keep for a couple months. By your experience, by 7, 8 months of pregnancy term, they already you guys already finished most of the.
Yeah, everything is done really. All of the paperwork is complete before the baby's going to be born. The social worker will have, their report is almost written. All they're going to do is once the baby's born, you would meet with the social worker again via video call while you were in the US and the social worker was here in New Zealand. They would just, have a chat with you, see the baby, and then they would finalize their report, which would be submitted to the court. Myself, I would have drafted all the documents for you ahead of the baby being born. And then once the baby's born, we would just finalize the documents with, okay, this is the date the baby was born, this is the place the baby was born, and put all of that information into the documents. And then the documents can then all be witnessed and signed off, and then we submit it to the court, and then we await a court hearing. But the courts have a process in place where they will set down an urgent court hearing, and it will be done online. So within the court has a target where they would set down the court hearing within 6 weeks of us filing the documents with the court. The earliest we can file the documents with the court is 2 weeks after the baby's born, because we have to wait that 2 weeks before the surrogate can sign the consent, and then we need the birth certificate as well. It's usually 2 to 3 weeks after the baby's born, the documents would be filed with the court. Arama Tamariki submits its report to the court, then the court hearing is scheduled within 6 weeks of that. So if you say you're looking at about 9 weeks after the baby's born, you will have had your court hearing. The New Zealand government will send by international courier the child's New Zealand passport to you in the US, and then you'd be able to travel back to New Zealand as one recognized family unit.
I see. So it seems like about 2 months, like 9 weeks, as you said. And then that's the
Roughly.
condition that the parents actually prepare everything ahead of time during the journey. That's 2 months, that's a lot of time. So if you said that the visa route, does that make them to return to New Zealand faster?
Yeah, it could potentially. So again, if we've done our work in advance, then we can get a pre-approved visa for the child by the Minister of Immigration before the baby's even born. So then when the baby's born and we get the birth certificate for the baby's US passport, and then the signed consent from the surrogate, we can make the visa application, which would be turned around within 1 week. So if we could potentially put those documents to the immigration service within about 2 weeks of the baby being born, and then you have a visa 1 week later. So you could then fly back to the New Zealand. Yeah. So within a month. Yeah.
But for you personally, you would recommend to do the first option versus the visa?
Really, it depends on the individual. Some people are quite happy to wait, and then other people they want to get back home because they just feel better to be back home. Maybe they've got other children back home, etc., and they just want to get back. Yeah, I mean, if you can wait, then by all means wait, because then you will come back and everything's done. Whereas if you come in through the visa route, you're still going to have to go through the court hearing process. But that can be done in New Zealand.
So if I apply visa, it does not affect how fast I can get the New Zealand, because it's a separate process.
It's a separate process.
People come to the US for surrogacy for different reasons, and then we have people use an egg donor or sperm donor and then surrogate. Does it make any difference for New Zealand government to recognize the parentalship?
No, it doesn't. I mean, I've represented clients before who have had no genetic connection to the child for medical reasons or other reasons. So where it's been an embryo donation, or they've needed sperm and an egg, for medical reasons, and so in those situations, New Zealand doesn't mind as long as it's legal where they're doing it, and that they have access to information about the donors that they can share with the children in the future. Then everybody's fine about it. The way New Zealand law works is, as I say, the woman who gives birth to the child is considered to be the mother of the child, And if she's got a partner, that her partner is then considered the other parent of the child, even though they have no biological connection to the child. The egg donor and sperm donor are considered just donors, and they have no legal rights or responsibility in respect of the child. Even if you had a New Zealand couple who had created an embryo with their own gametes here in New Zealand and had it transferred to the US and then transferred into a surrogate, New Zealand would say that the New Zealand parents are not the parents of the child. The surrogate is and her partner are the parents of the child, even though they have no biological connection to the child. And then the New Zealand couple would have to adopt their own biological child.
So the egg donation, the biological connection does not make any difference.
No.
How about marital status? Because in the US, it doesn't matter if you're married or not, you're a parent. And also, they have a same-sex couple situation. I know different country has a different rules.
New Zealand doesn't is very open, so you don't need to be married in order to adopt. You can be a de facto couple, and it doesn't, or you can be a single person, and you can be in a same-sex relationship as well. It doesn't matter.
Then when you have the social worker, I guess there's some evaluation, what they really look at.
They make a report for the court ultimately, and then the court makes a decision. But what they're looking at is, are you a fit and proper person to adopt? And that's the language that's in our legislation. So when they say fit and proper, really what they're saying is, are you medically fit, physically fit, mentally fit, and financially fit to look after a child? So that's why they're asking for the police reports, and they're asking for the medical reports about you. So you're not being medically assessed by your GP, or it's really more about, does this person have ongoing severe physical health issues or mental health issues that would compromise their ability to look after a child? They're looking at your financial status, but only in a very superficial way, that it's not as if you don't have enough money, you're not going to be able to have this child. It's not going to happen. I've never seen it. Really what they're doing is looking at your character as well. Have you got convictions? Are you a known person to the New Zealand authorities that would potentially pose a risk to a child? So that's really what they're looking at. So you need to make an evaluation of yourself and say, well, do I have any skeletons in the closet that's going to be a problem in this process?
Well, you said we'll start from even the surrogacy agreement stage, and then because the surrogate mother need to do something. What do surrogate mothers need to do for working?
So the surrogate mother and her partner, if she has one, are required to consent to the adoption. So that's a legal consent document, which I would draft for the surrogate. The surrogate also needs to provide an affidavit outlining from her perspective how this situation came to be. Again, I can draft that on the surrogate's behalf, and then the surrogate and her partner take those documents to a notary public in the US, who then reviews the documents, gets them to sign it and witness it and confirm that they are in agreement with this adoption taking place. The consent to adoption can only be signed 12 days after the baby is born. There's just a bit in the legislation that, it's for situations where somebody's given birth to a baby and then they're going to consent to adoption. They're just giving them a 12-day period in case they change their mind.
Do you need an original copy to be shipped to New Zealand, or you need a scanned copy?
A scanned copy is fine, and then if we can get the originals after, but we would initiate the court proceedings with the scanned copies.
What do the agencies need to do? What kind of support we need to give document-wise?
I mean, the agency really is the person who's matching people with surrogates and matching them with egg donors or sperm donors. From New Zealand's point of view, they want to ensure that the child has access to information related to their genetic origins. So as much information that the agency can share with the intended parents about who these people are, the more information that the child will then receive later when they're grown. There is a mix of countries and where some people are anonymous donors and some people are known donors. So from a New Zealand point of view, it's strongly encouraged that people have known donors as opposed to an anonymous donor. But, you know, in saying that, adoptions are still approved where they're not known.
So basically, do you need any like agency agreement, escrow account balance, or like their surrogacy contract notarized? Do you need all these documents?
We need a copy of the surrogacy agreement, the signed surrogacy agreement is what would be required. Don't really need a copy of the signed agency agreement.
Okay. Do you need a like a donation agreement, a copy?
It would be good to have.
I see. Yeah, because I know UK kind of a little bit different. And then my clients from UK told me if a surrogate is single, it's easier than their couple.
I mean, the only thing from New Zealand's point of view, because the surrogate's partner is considered to be the other parent of the child, it means that he also, or he or she also has to sign the consent to the adoption as well.
So I assume you don't need anything from the IVF doctor who did the transfer over here
No.
either. I see. Well, that's yeah.
Only in the occasions where there is no biological link with the intended parents. So then we need to have an explanation as to why this couple needed to use both egg and sperm.
Do you need
donation.
like the what's it called, the parental testing, like DNA testing?
DNA testing is required if there is a biological connection there as well.
What is the typical fee, the legal fee for get all this done?
It varies, but between attorneys in New Zealand, so I wouldn't really want to put a figure on it, and it varies depending on the situation. I have a sort of general fixed fee in my mind, but because it varies, I wouldn't really want to say.
I see. Okay. Yeah, we'll not share that information in public then. Is there any information you think or question I should ask?
No, I mean, I think that is it. It's just that whole point of contacting a New Zealand attorney early on in the piece and know what it is that you're going to have to do before you start the process.